How's it going, folks? Alvin here. As Caleb and I build out more content for the podcast, I'm going to start doing some of these one-offs to sort of break down the political psychology of things or add context or insight to scenarios that seem a little muddy in a world in which words and titles seem to mean nothing and everything all at once. I saw this clip on The Hill with Brianna Joy Gray and Liz Wolfe, and they're discussing immigration, specifically asylum seeking. And Liz Wolfe comes with a take that for many may have thrown them off because she's a right winger, saying what she's saying, but also maybe tricked the viewer and in regards to like sort of the motives behind what she was saying. So I thought it'd be a perfect video to launch these breakdowns I want to do in the future. Now, before I get started, I want to say I respect Liz. I like her a lot and I appreciate that she goes out and fights for her beliefs, but she is a libertarian, which means she's economically the opposite of everything I believe as a lefty and generally the opposite of reality. So that's, one thing, but on top of that, she's not just a libertarian. She's a Coke brand libertarian. Liz works for Reason Magazine, which is funded by Koch family foundations, and is every bit a part of the Powell Memo libertarian push post 1970. Now, that's not to say that I think they've twisted up her beliefs, but just more of a comment that she is a hard-nosed believer in all things regarding modern libertarianism. So before I get into the video, I just want to do a quick background on what libertarianism is, in case you don't know. Libertarianism is a belief that has always been around. It's just sort of is a sentiment, but the label itself wasn't used until the early 1800s, late 1700s. Since the modern form of mainline economic politics didn't exist, most people level politics were social politics. How we treat each other, how you want to be treated. These are the things that people concern themselves with in a world where they didn't have much economic freedom. And libertarianism was no different. Libertarianism started out as a left-wing belief of personal autonomy, meaning being able to do what you want to do as long as you aren't hurting someone and not be under the thumb of a government, which at the time was important because nearly all forms of government were authoritarianism or monarchy based. And libertarianism still is now a left social belief, even though it's kind of warped over the generations. Now, democracy was a relatively new thing, and America's form of democracy was still very much in its infancy. So wanting to be free and have a say in what's going on was starting to grow. When I say a Koch brand libertarian, I'm referring to the perversion of the original use of libertarianism to its current form, specifically as it turns from merely being a social belief that a person can do whatever they want to do, to get into more modern economics, where the sole purpose was framed to get the government not only out of your personal lives, but out of your pockets as well. In reality and in practice, it's used to get the government out of the way of big business, which is why people like the Kochs spend so much money to cultivate this belief system. Now, a Koch libertarian, now what's a modern libertarian, at best thinks that a business should be free to poison local waters at their own risk of losing business via bad PR, thus regulating itself and incentivizing natural good behavior. However, if that doesn't work and the lack of sales is not harming the business enough to coerce them to change their business model, it's actually incumbent on the citizens to simply pick up and move and find a new area with fresher water. Never mind the cost of how much it costs to move, the inability to find a new job, and to sit there hoping that a new business doesn't come in, a new conglomerate doesn't come in and decides to water your new water or decides to poison your new water source. So obviously, there's a lot missing in this philosophy. That's an incoherent belief system that ignores certain facts of life, and it's why libertarianism on an economic level is absurd. So what does this have to do with anything? Okay, so Liz did a segment that I imagine confused a lot of people who are unfamiliar with Koch libertarianism. Like I said, the segment was on the Hill. And if you're unfamiliar with the Hill's format, it's usually someone on the left wing co-hosting with someone on the right wing. So to tee this up, Liz is on with the wonderful Brianna Joy Gray, who is your clear lefty and did her thing. But she's also setting up this question and getting ready to serve it to Liz so she can do her right-wing response. Liz is obviously the righty, and as such, you can expect her to do her right-wing duty and take typical political lines regarding immigration. Let's see what she does.
People anticipated that when Title 42 went away, that there was going to be this surge across the border. It seems like that is not, at least in the short term, the case. What do you make of this all, Liz?
I think we need to be drastically increasing the number of people we let seek asylum in the United States. I mean, fundamentally, we have people fleeing all kinds of countries that are just in states of utter chaos and disrepair. People fleeing Venezuela, people fleeing Cuba, people fleeing cartel violence in Mexico and El Salvador. It is hard not to look at this footage and see mothers holding young children. I saw one image that was, I believe, a mother or a father holding a 3-month-old child, effectively a newborn, attempting to cross the Rio Grande, holding the child up to ensure that they wouldn't be touching the water. Children going without diapers without clean diapers for days on end, waiting at the border, trying to be let into this country. I'm sorry, but it's hard for me to see anything other than a moral imperative to allow these people in and to improve our capacity to process these asylum claims. Libertarians like myself fundamentally believe in the free movement of people and goods across borders. And it is hard for me to look at this situation and, frankly, not get angry at conservatives who are anti-immigration or immigration restrictionists and feel a certain sense that we have a profound moral duty to take care of these people and to process them quickly and in a way that is humane. We need to drastically increase all of our visa allotments, and we need to drastically increase the number of people who we let into this country and allow to seek asylum here. I'm talking, massive, massive increases. And I think it's fair to talk about how to scale up these amounts over time to ensure there's not, a huge shock to the system. I mean, look, I had a newborn recently. It is hard enough recovering from childbirth and taking care of a newborn. The idea of making a harrowing journey across the Rio Grande or across the desert in Arizona in order to attempt to get a better life for your kids. I mean, I can't even imagine how horrible their circumstances must be in their home countries for that risk to be assumed.
Okay, so that sounds pretty left-wing, wouldn't you say? If you're unfamiliar with how Koch libertarianism works, one might think Liz was possessed by the ghost of AOC Pats, but I assure you she wasn't, okay? As she rightly states, libertarians don't believe in hard national borders, and your more radical libertarians don't believe in them at all. And the reason is simple. A border, like many government overreaching policies, limit your ability to freely roam around. How dare a government say that I'm not allowed to walk on this non-private land simply because I'm not a citizen of this nation? This is anti-freedom in the mind of libertarians, and they're not completely wrong, or at least they do have a sound argument. I may not agree, but at least I get it. Now, listen, as I said, I'm a progressive. I'm pro-asylum, pro-immigration. I'm even pro-amnesty for those who already illegally crossed and are productive in our society. I'm glad Liz is on this side. I'm glad she's showing empathy for those that have risked their life to escape whatever horrors are happening in their home country. But I'm not convinced this is the reason why she's wanting increased asylum and increased immigration. The reason because she's a Koch libertarian. Aside from the social reasons to do it, there's an economic one that's 100% part of Koch ideology. I'll let Bernie explain it here.
But I think if you take global poverty that seriously, it leads you to conclusions that in the US are considered out of political bounds. Things like sharply raising the level of immigration we permit, even up to a level of open borders, about sharply increasing
open
the
borders.
amount of foreign aid.
Open borders. That's a Koch brothers proposal. The
Really?
idea, of course. I mean, that's a right-wing proposal which says essentially there is no United States.
But it would make a lot of the
global
global poor richer, wouldn't it?
And it'd make everybody in America poor. Then you're doing away with the concept of a nation state. And I don't think there's any country in the world which believes in that. If you believe in a nation state, or in a country called the United States or UK or Denmark or any other country, you have an obligation, in my view, to do everything we can to help poor people. What right-wing people in this country would love is an open border policy. Bring in all kinds of people who work for $2 or $3 an hour. That would be great for them. I don't believe in that.
Okay, so just like what Bernie was saying, there's an economic cut to this. Koch libertarians want lax borders because it allows for cheap labor to come in and flatten wages for American labor. Corporations already use our desperation to pit us against each other and force the value of our labor into a free fall. Adding a more desperate group into this equation forces labor into an even more depraved game where only the elites win. Now, if you're surprised with Bernie's stance on border security, you shouldn't be. Despite what right-wing media will say about Bernie-type politics and politicians, it's understood amongst progressives that having a secure nation is necessary to the success of our social programs. To the extent that we're pro-immigration, it's under the acknowledgement that it's morally correct, not just because there's no harm in it, but it's the right thing to do, considering we've destroyed many of these countries and have basically forced these migrants to come here seeking salvation. Furthermore, it's understood that the real solution of immigration influxes, should that be a concern of yours, would be to help stabilize the countries that these migrants come from, which, to be fair, Bree did touch on it in a response that I cut out earlier. America has military bases around the world. Not one of them is there to make the country more habitable. Maybe it's time that we do something good with them instead of dropping bombs and start dropping food. Now, Liz isn't going to say that. America needs to stop destroying these places and do better. Her solution is to bring their desperation here so they can be picked at by big business and force Americans to compete. I don't want to say Liz is cynically using the social part of amnesty, but I just have a hard time believing this is the thing that pushed her over, because she's already politically on this side. She already has a principle of free immigration, regardless of seeing a mom cross, holding her baby and risking her life and stuff, that sort of thing. And I just felt she laid it on really thick for the segment. And also, being a well-versed Koch-affiliated reporter, I have a hard time believing she doesn't understand the business economic side of this equation from her own angle. She must just know not to talk about it, which is why I decided to call her out on it. So anyway, that's all I have to say about all of that. Leave a comment if you think I'm wrong, if you think I'm being too harsh on her. Let me know. And I'll see you next time. Bye.